If you just look at the surface, Japan seems like one of the most secular countries on the planet. But then you look a little closer, and you see a culture that's absolutely overflowing with spiritual customs and traditions. So why is that? Why does a country that seems so non-religious on paper act so, well, differently in real life? That's the paradox we're going to try and unravel today.
So to get to the bottom of this, we're going to follow the clues. First, we'll look at the data, the surprising numbers that create this whole mystery. Then, we'll see how people's actions seem to just completely contradict that data. After that, we'll dig into a fascinating problem of translation and a really unique cultural idea that values doing something over believing in it. And then finally, we'll put all the pieces together and solve this puzzle of Japan's invisible faith.
All right, first things first, let's look at the numbers. This whole story really starts with a simple question asked in national surveys. And well, the answer is what puzzles so many of us in the West. So here it is, the first piece of the puzzle. A survey asked people in Japan a really straightforward question. Do you have any personal faith? And the answer is pretty startling. Over 72% of people said no. I mean, that's nearly 3 out of every 4 people you'd meet. On paper, that makes Japan look like one of the most secular places on Earth. So, case closed, right? Well, not quite. Because the second you stop looking at polls and you start looking at what people actually do, the picture gets a whole lot more complicated. The actions just don't seem to match the answers. Okay, so take Hatsumode, which is the first shrine visit of the new year. In just the first few days of January, one single place, the Meiji Shrine in Tokyo, gets over 3 million visitors. And that's just one of thousands of shrines across the country. So you have to ask, how does a country where 72% of people claim to have no faith also have millions of them lining up for a spiritual ritual? Something doesn't add up. And this is where the contradiction becomes just crystal clear. Look at these numbers. A survey found that about 73% of people visit a shrine for New Year's and 76% visit their family graves. Now, wait a minute. Those percentages are almost exactly the same as the number of people who told us they have no faith. So it seems like the very same people who say they aren't religious are the ones participating in these rituals. So this is a genuine puzzle, right? Are people just being inconsistent, or is there something much deeper happening? Well, the answer isn't about people being hypocritical. It's about history, and it's about the meaning of a single word. The first really big clue to solving this mystery isn't found in belief, but in language. It turns out that when Japanese people answer a question about religion, they're responding to a very specific and surprisingly modern idea. You see, the word for religion in Japanese is shukyo, but that wasn't some ancient term. It was actually created in the 19th century for one reason: to translate the Western concept of religion, a system like Christianity or Islam that has a specific founder, a central holy book, and an organization you formally join. For a lot of Japanese people, their native traditions like Shinto, they just don't fit that mold. And this really gets at a fundamental difference in how we think about this stuff. In the West, religion is often about what you believe, a creed you recite, a doctrine you accept in your heart. But traditions like Shinto are built around what you do, the customs, the rituals, the proper way of behaving. The whole focus is on your actions, not just what's going on in your head. And this wasn't just some abstract idea. It became official government policy for almost 80 years. As you can see here, back in the late 1800s, the government wanted to promote national unity, so they did something really strategic. They declared that state-sponsored Shinto was not a religion, but was a set of patriotic, civic duties that all citizens should do. This really cemented the idea in people's minds that visiting a shrine was just something you did as a good citizen, and it had nothing to do with personal faith. And that official policy, it only ended after World War II. Okay, so that's the historical reason for all this confusion. But there's an even deeper cultural philosophy at work here, one that puts the emphasis on practice, not belief. And this is the really crucial point. In this way of thinking, spirituality isn't just an idea you have, it's something you do with your body. It lives in the physical performance of rituals, etiquette, and form. A key concept that helps us understand all of this is kata. Now, kata often gets translated as form, but it's so much more than a static shape. It's a dynamic pattern of movement, the correct way of doing something. It could be a tea ceremony, a martial art, or even the simple act of bowing at a shrine. And kata isn't about just mindlessly copying something. As the historian Minamoto Ryoan explains, true kata requires heart. It's about internalizing a practice so completely that the action and your inner spirit become one. The physical form is really just a vessel for a deeper meaning.
This whole idea of internalizing an action is perfectly captured in the learning process called shu-ha-ri. First, in the shu stage, you meticulously follow the rules. You copy the form perfectly. Then, in the ha stage, you understand it so well that you can start to break it and innovate. And finally, in the ri stage, you transcend the form altogether. The practice has become so natural, so much a part of you, that the action is the expression of spirit. There's no need to stop and ask yourself, do I believe this? You just do it.
So now we can bring all the pieces together. We can finally see the full picture and resolve that mystery we started with. Honestly, the best way to think about it is like a cultural operating system. Shinto and all its customs are so deeply embedded in the fabric of daily life, in the language, the holidays, the etiquette, that they just run silently in the background. It guides people's behavior without ever requiring them to consciously believe in a doctrine, and that makes it almost invisible, even to the people who practice it. So, that paradox we started with? It's solved. The whole non-religious statistic comes from a very narrow Western definition of the word religion. In reality, spirituality is woven so deeply into everyday life that it becomes invisible. It's expressed physically through this concept of kata, which builds a really rich spiritual life based on what you do, not just what you say you believe. And that leaves us with a really fascinating question, one that goes way beyond Japan. We tend to think of faith as something you declare, something you believe in your head. But what if the deepest forms of spirituality aren't found in a book or a creed at all, but in the silent, meaningful actions we perform every single day?